This is the Chamber Chat Podcast, the show dedicated to chamber professionals to spark ideas and to get actionable tips and strategies to better serve your members and community. Hello, Chamber Champions. Welcome to Chamber Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Burton, and it's my goal here on the podcast to introduce you to people and ideas to better help you serve your chamber members and your community. Our title sponsor is Community Matters, Inc. With nearly 20 years in the chamber industry and over 100 media awards presented to their chamber partners, Community Matters provides the R&R that every chamber needs: revenue and recognition. When it comes to publishing a chamber map, directory, or community guide, Community Matters has a trusted experience to help your chamber accomplish your goals. With different advertising sales models and publication styles, Community Matters will help you create a non-dues revenue machine. Let's hear from Becky Womble, President and CEO of the Bastrop Chamber, to hear about her experience using Community Matters.
I've been using Community Matters for probably 6 or 7 years now. And in a previous life, I sold commercial printing. So I can highly recommend Community Matters because it's a complete turnkey job for any busy chamber exec. Basically, you give them a membership list, and from there, they contact your members, and it's no high pressure sales or anything. And it really is a complete turnkey job from start to finish. And it's a wonderful, beautiful printed product whenever you're finished. And I'm very sold on Community Matters. And with a printing background, big endorsement for me.
To learn how Community Matters can support your chamber with your next publication, please visit communitymattersinc.com/podcast to request your free media kit and request a proposal to find out what kind of non-dues revenue you can generate. Our guest for this episode is Arthur Havlicek. Arthur is the president and CEO of the Southwest Michigan Regional Chamber of Commerce. A native of the region himself, Arthur grew up in Bridgman and graduated from Lake Michigan Catholic High School in St. Joseph. He earned his degree in political science and public administration from Grand Valley State University in Grand Rapids, during which time he also began managing and winning political campaigns. After college, Arthur served as staff in the Michigan House of Representatives, where he was involved with numerous significant legislative achievements. With nearly a decade in public service experience, by the age of 27, Arthur decided to return home. He assumed his current position as president and CEO of the chamber in January of 2020 and has quickly become a recognized leader in both his industry and his community. Arthur currently serves as board member of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, the Michigan Association of Chamber Professionals, other local organizations, and as executive director of a local community and economic development organization called the Bridgman Area Chamber and Growth Alliance. He's also a 2023 graduate of the prestigious Business Leads Fellowship Program through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Arthur, I'm excited to have you with us today here on Chamber Chat Podcast. I'd love to just give you a moment to say hello to all the Chamber champions that are out there listening and to share something interesting about yourself so we can all get to know you a little better.
Well, sure. Brandon, thank you, first of all, for having me. I've listened to many of your podcasts with chamber professionals over the last 4 or 5 years as I've tried to look for advice and counsel on how to take our chamber to the next level. So hopefully I can pass along some tidbits to the next generation of folks here. Something interesting about me is always a tough question to answer, I think, but a development in the last 4 months was the birth of my daughter, Nora. So it's my wife and I's first child, born on September 12th. And, what a paradigm shift in anyone's life, having that first kid and the love that you experience and the smiles that you get that just melt you. And being her dad has quickly become my absolute favorite thing about life, and watching my wife grow into a beautiful mother. And it's been the last 4 months have been incredibly rewarding. So I'd say that's what's top of mind right now.
As it should be. That is awesome. Congratulations to you and your wife.
Thank you.
That is something exciting. And goes quick. My oldest just turned 18, so it
Oh,
goes in a
yeah.
blink of an eye, and before you know it, just cherish her
Yes,
as you are.
I can't even imagine her with teeth. So yeah, thinking about her at 18 is
Let
oof.
alone an attitude, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wait for it. No. But tell us a little bit about the Southwest Michigan Regional Chamber. Just give us some context, the size of the chamber, scope of work you're involved with, staff, budget, that sort of thing to kind of set the
Sure.
table for our discussion.
Sure. So we are a lean and mean organization. We are a tri-county regional chamber of commerce in Southwest Michigan, serving Berrien, Cass, and Van Buren counties. We're a 501c6, which most chambers are, I believe. And we have about 700 members spread geographically throughout the region and in multiple states, which is easier for us to say considering we are right on the border of Indiana and often have to compete with Indiana for business development. We have 3 full-time people on staff. We are on the precipice of hiring a 4th person with some restructuring that we've been able to do. And our budget is really only around, I'd say, 400,000. So, um, that is something that we have taken a look at, and it's a byproduct, I think, of what I would consider the old chamber membership model. And we are trying to shift to a new organizational structure that allows us to fundraise for more impact, hire more staff, have more capacity, do more programming, and better serve our businesses. So we can talk about what that looks like. I believe that direction is the future of chambers.
Yeah, it sounds like you're on the precipice of some really exciting things and some big changes there at the chamber.
Mhm.
So, the topic that we settled on today, I know there's been a lot of interest in chamber world around this, so I'm excited to get your perspective on it. But around mergers and acquisitions and bringing in affiliations, with other chambers possibly. So we'll dive in much deeper on this conversation and your experience on it as soon as I get back from this quick break. Are you looking for a year-round, affordable, and timely shop local campaign for your chamber or CVB? Look no further. Build a custom Eat, Shop, Play mobile app with App My Community by visiting appmycommunity.com/chamberchat. App My Community mobile apps are not just simple membership directory listings. They provide many more capabilities to engage with your community. Provide your residents with a robust events calendar. Partner with a local fair, festival, or farmers market to provide a schedule, map, and other resources to promote the event. Run a small business Saturday campaign any time of the year using built-in scavenger hunts. Allow your membership to communicate directly to their customers via push notifications. Your App My Community mobile app will be a unique member benefit, allow you to generate non-dues revenue with sponsorship opportunities, and best of all, provide a valuable resource to your community. Please visit appmycommunity.com/chamberchat now to receive 10% off your first year of an App My Community mobile app. Are you looking for a way to grow and manage your Chamber of Commerce more effectively? Look no further than Chamber Nation. Their innovative software provides everything you need to streamline operations, engage members, and increase revenue. With features like event management, membership directories, advanced membership tools, mobile apps, community kiosks, and financial reporting, Chamber Nation makes it easy to run your chamber like a well-oiled machine. Don't miss out on this opportunity to take your chamber to the next level. Visit richardscalendar.com to learn more about Chamber Nation today. All right, Arthur, we're back. I would love to know, just from the time you joined or came on board at the Southwest Michigan Regional Chamber, January 2020, there's some things happening around that time, right?
To say the least.
Yeah. So you can say that the apple cart was being kind of tipped over, business wise, for local businesses, small businesses, big businesses, just in general, but chambers as well. So through the pandemic, we saw, some reorganizations within the chamber world. And I'd love to maybe just get the background and history there locally for you guys. What did that experience look like, and how have things evolved since you came on board in January 2020?
Sure. So I get asked this all the time, basically having enough time to find the bathrooms before our entire world changed. And everyone's first reaction is what terrible timing. I mean, that couldn't be worse timing. And I genuinely um, believe the opposite, actually. I was able to step into my role, find the bathrooms, meet a lot of the key community leaders that I would have to interface with and work intimately with over the coming months and years. And what I always say is I didn't have time to get into the chamber box, so we had no problem thinking outside of it, frankly. We were able to act very quickly, very boldly, which were two, I guess, crisis management principles that we actually intentionally adopted during that time. And we tried to innovate and do new things. And while, a lot of organizations, a lot of businesses were rightfully saying, I just don't know what to do next, we were viewed very much as a leader and a pace setter, and were able to rally the community around various causes and really just energize them. And then my background in Lansing allowed me to read the tea leaves a little better than most, I think, and be able to predict what restrictions were coming next or make phone calls and clarify what those restrictions included. And Michigan, as you may know, is one of the more stringent, or some would even say draconian in their handling of the pandemic. So we had businesses shut down for well over a year, entire industries. And again, being on the border, we felt that more deeply because all of our consumers just drove 20 minutes to Indiana where everything was open. So I think it was our level of activity and how vocal we were, saying being pro-business and pro-public health are not mutually exclusive. There's a way that we can do this and keep customers safe, employees safe, keep our community safe, and keep commerce moving. And I think that the community responded to that. I think they respected that. And frankly, I think that that's our role as chambers of commerce. That's part of what we were formed to do, and we shouldn't shy away from those conversations.
Right. So when you were given a little bit of background about your chamber, you had mentioned you guys are a tri-county chamber.
Mhm.
Um, how long have you guys been a tri-county chamber, and how did that come to be?
Great question. So our chamber has gone through multiple evolutions, I guess. This 2024 is actually our 70th anniversary. We started as the Twin Cities Area Chamber of Commerce, and that would be in 1954, if the math is correct. And then operated like that, became one of the largest chambers in the state, actually, at the time, around the 1970s, with something over 1,200 members, I think. Very, very impressive. And then as communities started to move towards more economic development organizations and economic development focus, we merged with a community development corporation to form another organization, an economic development organization. And our chamber sort of went away for a couple years until the community raised their hand and said, we'd like them back. So then it came back as the Cornerstone Chamber of Commerce, serving its historical footprint of northern Berrien County. And it wasn't until we affiliated with another local chamber in my hometown of Bridgman that the decision was made. Looking around the country at some trends towards regionalism. Why don't we regionalize? We're the largest chamber in the region already. This affiliation with a community, miles away from our historical footprint is a perfect opportunity. And so we rebranded from the um, Cornerstone Chamber of Commerce to the Southwest Michigan Regional Chamber of Commerce. And that would have been, I believe, in it was about 2018, 2019. So really right before I I got here. And just because of the leadership transition, I don't think that a lot of that living that regional mission had been able to be completed yet, just pure sake of timing. And so that was something that I immediately put my foot on the gas and said, if we're talking about serving a broader territory, we need to figure out the best way to do that with a small team. We can't be everywhere. And I think that we've been able to do that authentically since my hire. We have absorbed actually two chambers, and that would be the Lakeshore Chamber of Commerce in a town called Stevensville, and then the Baroda Area Business Association in a small town called Baroda. Um, Neither of those were, we didn't want to see them go, which is a point that I want to make very clear. We went through a whole process, which I can talk about later, where we were like, what can we do to prop you up? But with, you know, just less engagement from a volunteer perspective, and which we see in every community across the country, it's getting harder to sustain these entities, these all volunteer entities. And so they'll look to organizations like ours that have the resources and the staff and say, hey, can we just hand you the keys and trust you to do a good job? And you have to build trust to do that, but that's what we've done. So I think our organization has, in its entire history, absorbed 3 chambers outright and has affiliated with one, being the Bridgman Chamber and Growth Alliance, which we're going through changes there, exciting changes.
Yeah. No, so it is fascinating. And I think that's important. You had said that you didn't want to see these chambers or business associations go away. Which is, I think, part of the reason why you guys stepped in to help make that continue, help create a bridge, I guess, to continue on with the work that they had been doing there. But why don't you touch a little bit more on that, the approach with how you didn't want to see them go, but also supporting them during that transition period?
Sure. So again, I think in both of those cases, I mean, they had membership anywhere between 50 to 100, maybe a few more members. And so, in that regard, they were doing well, but changeover on those volunteer boards and some of the loss of some of that institutional memory and the burden of having these typically business leaders spend that amount of time trying to breathe life into an all volunteer organization, in both cases, just became too much. So uh, from the very first conversations we had with them, my stance was shutting down, these entities should be always the last resort, in my opinion. And I think because I genuinely believe identity is important in our work, in our industry. Identity is a crucial component to promoting your area, but also to businesses wanting to invest in a specific organization. We're a good example of this. The Southwest Michigan Regional Chamber sounds like a massive, somewhat nebulous, right, organization that I'm sure there are other businesses that are feeding into that. I'd rather feed into my hometown chamber. Well, you lose that hometown identity, and you might lose that business from understanding why it's important to invest in a chamber in the first place. So I try to flip the model on its head and say, how can we prop up and help these community chambers so that businesses, want to invest? They have that community pride in it. And then we could be the back end for it. So what we did, I'll try to keep the answer short, was we had multiple conversations with their board of directors, in some cases taking over a year to talk everything through. I had crafted decision documents that basically were, all the decisions that would have to be made if we affiliate, if we merge, if we dissolve, and all the things that would have to be thought through. and simply we just work through it. And in both of these cases that I'm referencing, they really came to the conclusion, look, we have faith in you. We really just want to know that our businesses aren't being, left hanging. It's our way to close the loop, but we think you'll do a good job. And so they made the decision to fold entirely and then come into us. And what we've tried to do is absorb not just those members, but those board of directors. We've tried to take them and say, okay, is there a place on our board for you? Is there a place on our ambassador committee for you? And so that way we still have their um, participation and engagement, but without the level of I guess commitment that they had to before that was becoming untenable.
Yeah. So you touched on some big things there. And one of the things that I was going to circle back to is identity and that sense of community. Um, I've seen this. So in my background working with chambers is it's been chamber publishing that I do. So well, oftentimes we're working with chambers who have that very defined identity, right? They're the ABC city chamber, right? Whatever
Right.
their town is. And once you get into a regional or multi-county, it can kind of lose that sense of that community feel,
That's right.
especially with, as I say, with publications, right? It's like you want to highlight the things the community offers and what's your scope if you're covering such a large area. So I like that you guys are being intentional with, especially bringing their board members and ambassadors and trying to create space for them within your organization to keep that tie to those communities. But how do you try to enforce that sense of identity, that sense of feel on the local level? I think that's a hard area to navigate, and hopefully you guys are doing it in more of a successful way than some other chambers might have approached.
Well, so it is extremely difficult, especially when you're covering a large territory with very few staff. So but to be intentional in the communications you're putting out, to be intentional on if you have an event, make sure that you're inviting, that community's core people. The identity thing, chambers of commerce, in my opinion, are legacy institutions in most of the communities that they exist in, much like the public school system is in any of those communities. And the bad C word in all of this is going to be consolidation. And there's always fear of that because I don't want to lose my mascot. I don't want to be that mascot, right? So you don't want your schools to merge, even though that's probably what's best for the kids. It's really no different in the chamber world. So finding a way to keep that identity and um, celebrate the history and the legacy because that chamber has accomplished a lot over its tenure. It's no small task. Um, with the Bridgman Chamber and Growth Alliance, the one that we affiliated, the organization we affiliated with back in 2018 that sparked our name change. I want to walk through that because I think it's a good
Yeah.
case study for um, maybe what not to do and then maybe what to do. And so when it was originally constructed, and I'm oversimplifying, but essentially the CGA and its board remained in place, remained its own organization, a 501c3, completely independent. And we came in and became the service provider for all of those members. So those members started paying dues directly to us. So I'm a Bridgman business. I'm cutting a check to the Southwest Michigan Regional Chamber of Commerce. There's a variety of reasons that I think my predecessor structured it that way. Um, Probably, for no other reason other than we had the CRM and chamber master to be able to handle all of that and the staff to do the dues and collections. But from what I've observed over the now, 4 years of sitting in this role is that's a community that is immensely proud of its name. And I believe, we believe so strongly in that identity piece. over the last several months, we have actually been working to restore the members to that local chamber and serve more as the back end for it and allow it to operate and thrive, hopefully, as the Bridgman CGA once again, which is, I would like to think, a pretty radical step. Once you fight and grab these members, most people will do anything to hold on to them. And I'm saying, I think what's best is to allow them to invest in their community chamber directly, have that money stay there, be governed locally, which is also important. And then we will have agreements with that chamber to be the back end, to hire the staff person that I referenced, the fourth person that'll be coming on shortly. And just since we've announced these changes, it has opened up multiple possibilities with businesses, with the municipalities themselves, the city and the township down there. So, with all chambers being different, all communities being different, there's no one right answer. You just have to figure out what works for that community. And sometimes it takes a year of negotiations. Sometimes it takes 4 years of affiliation before you figure out exactly how it's going to work. But if you're authentic and you build trust, you'll be given that leeway and hopefully end up in the right place.
So with these more recent, opportunities, we'll say, or experiences of absorbing these other organizations, it sounds like most of them were volunteer led. Is that what I
Correct.
understand?
Correct.
So if you can, do you mind talking a little bit about the negotiations with that? Did they approach you? Did your chamber approach them and say we can help? Or how did these conversations begin and evolve?
Yeah. So in every one of these situations, the local chamber, so to speak, approached us. And I think that probably happened because we do our best to be good neighbors in the chamber space. I don't view I view competition as being outside of the region that we're in, not within it, right? And if we can work together to compete, we're all going to win. And plus, I think if you are a business that believes in the value of one chamber, you're helping all chambers because you're one more business that believes in the work that we do. So, I think that we had some trust built to begin with, and we tried to be very collaborative with these organizations, and they were very collaborative, back. But in every scenario, they approached us saying, look, we're at a crossroads. We can either try to hire, which we may not have, the dollars to do. We may dissolve. We could fold into you. And we're basically just saying, hey, look, we need help. And we took each of those conversations as seriously as we could, because that's no small thing to say, hey, we may need to wind down this organization. And the other thing, I guess, for our area specifically, and probably many areas across the country, is our region has a declining population and an aging population. And so demographically, we're moving in a direction where there are going to be fewer people with the capacity to serve in these volunteer roles. And so I guess we use the term sprawl when we're talking about, economic development. The organizational sprawl, so to speak, peaked when our population peaked. And as our population has declined, fewer people have been tasked with propping up, not only infrastructure, but organizations. And so we're going to see a natural attrition, I think. And our stance is, well, we want to be able to help those that want to stay in existence and even help those that don't. And so that's what we've been doing. There's no secret sauce. It's just like I keep saying the word authenticity because I think the number one thing, and it's the thing that you can't fake. It's definitional. But that's what ultimately allows you to come in and serve these other areas. And if you lead with that authenticity and you try to keep that identity, you're halfway there.
Yeah. So in what you're sharing through this experience, it sounds maybe a little different than what it would look like maybe to acquire another business, right? We're looking at the P&Ls and the financial statements and seeing
Right.
how profitable. Like the negotiations are going to be a different thing because it's not like you're saying, hey, we want to bring on, more work for maybe little return, but at the same time, you want to support that. Like you said, there's no competition within the region.
Right.
As long as you can build up the region, then you all win. Um, so I imagine, are there other points in the negotiation that would look different than like looking to acquire a business?
Well, so I'm actually glad you made that point, and forgive me for not mentioning it sooner. There, much like any business acquisition, there was an extensive due diligence process on our end to make sure that we wouldn't be inheriting any, debt or liabilities, obligations, and it required a deep dive into financials, not necessarily to see how profitable being in the nonprofit space. It wasn't about how profitable these institutions were, but just making sure that we weren't absorbing something that was underwater or had, back taxes, you name it. So, I'll stress that that due diligence does have to occur, and it has to be done just like you would in the private sector, with that level of care, that duty of care. But you know, being in the nonprofit space where profit is less important, you need enough dollars to be able to serve your members effectively. It it was I would say, a softer, right? There's the hard skills and the soft skills. It was the softer of the two that we led with, because it was really about the end product and the work, more than the dollars. And that's also a byproduct of us not being the initiator. That's them coming to us and us just saying, how can we figure out how to make this work in a way that's not going to put my organization at risk, which I was upfront about with all of them, and they all understood and hopefully appreciated some of the professionalism that demonstrated, that we weren't just, yes, we'll take your members. It was, let's go through a process and think about this. You take a peek at our finances, we take a peek at yours. We make sure everything is actually going to work. Um, so that's really how we went about it. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I should have mentioned
Yeah.
that part, an important part, a lot sooner.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you touching on that. And as these negotiations went about, was it with the staff or the volunteer staff or with the boards? How did the communications go?
It was typically the executive committee of the board and whatever chairperson or president that they had. There were no staff in any of these scenarios, which I think was one of the um, catalytic reasons that they approached us in the first place, because they saw us as having that capacity to serve their members better, and true to chamber form, all trying to do what's right by your members, even if it means, saying goodbye to your own brand. That's a level of integrity that I don't think we see often. So, yeah, it was the executive committees, and the chairs specifically that much of the negotiations occurred with.
Yeah. So if we can, I know we're getting a little short on time, but I wanted to touch a little bit more on the affiliation part,
Sure.
the aspect, because I don't know. I think there may be some chambers out there that might shy away from doing affiliations with other chambers because they feel like they might lose out on some revenue. So you had mentioned that there's not competition within the region. I love that point of view. But how would you suggest a chamber approach affiliations with neighboring chambers or uh, uh, chambers that can be supportive of one
Sure.
community to the other?
Yeah, so again, scenarios are going to be very different. I mean, in our scenario, we were a much larger entity affiliating with a much smaller entity. That dynamic is going to be different than if two chambers of equal size were trying to figure out how they could merge. And we've seen though that happen quite a bit. And just, you take the two community names and put them together. Um, but in our case, that affiliation agreement that we struck, and we signed a legal document basically stipulating, the members would come our way in exchange, services would go that way. And it talked about some of the finances and put sunsets. And there was a phase in for the businesses because our dues structures differed. We were slightly more expensive, but enough to might be a sticker shock or would have prevented folks from making that transition. So, what I want to focus on is I guess how we're going to do it as opposed to how it was initially done, because I think where we're headed is a much more sustainable model. And what we're doing is we worked with the city of Bridgman in this case and Lake Charter Township, which is the township surrounding the city, to invest in a paid staff person that we end up actually hiring, but those dollars go to the CGA. The CGA then, through a management service agreement, compensates us for hiring that individual. We supervise that individual on a day-to-day basis, but the CGA board actually sets the vision and the duties and the responsibilities. And then the CGA board has seats specifically dedicated to each of those municipalities. So there are all these layers of local control, local governance, local identity. And like I said, we're restoring members back to that organization. So that's our good faith effort saying, you're pitching in, we're taking the business investment, pitching in. And then, for us, we know that that money is, I guess, coming back to us to be able to pay for that staff. But we're really a pass through, and really it's our benefits. These Bridgman businesses are getting 2 chamber memberships for the price of 1. And they're able to utilize all of our benefits, all of our infrastructure, and that reduction in duplication is huge. It allows the dollars to go a lot further. And we are thrilled to have boots on the ground down there again, just focus solely on that community because it's a community with a tremendous amount of potential. So, there's just a ton of, and I guess, just like the private sector, we went about it really professionally to figure out if the finances would work, what the management service agreements would look like. There's agreements between each individual municipality and the CGA, and then the CGA with our organization, and then between us and the person we hire. So it's complicated, but completely doable.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you touching on that because I think, and obviously everyone needs to take their unique approach to it with every chamber and every community looking a little different, but that helps to give some perspective for chambers that may be kind of kicking around the idea of affiliations. As we start to wrap up, I wanted to ask for chambers that are listening who are looking to take their organization up to the next level, what kind of tips or action item might you suggest for them to try to implement back at their organization?
Well, I've got a couple, if you don't mind. I use the word authenticity quite a bit, so I will lead again with that. If you are being authentic, you're paving a much easier path for everything that you try to undertake. The second thing I'll say is that I know that all chambers are very different. They serve different purposes, different functions. And it might be my background speaking, but I do think that advocacy it is a primary reason why chambers exist. And, it's an intimidating arena to get into, but there's a way to do it, again, authentically, where you're not going to rock the boat necessarily, but you're still taking a stand for your members. And the analogy I use here all the time is just about every community has like a humane society, right? Taking care of animals. And no one is going to them and asking them why they're so pro pet. So why would I entertain anyone coming to me and saying, gosh, why are you so pro business? Well, that's what I'm here. That's my job. And when I put it like that, I usually am able to, calm down whoever is getting a little fired up about the positions I'm taking, and just saying it is my job to stand in the gap for these members. You are entitled to disagree with it, and I'm going to serve you anyway. It's all about the ecosystem. But the larger point, the third thing I want to mention is we need to be unafraid to take risks. We need to be bold. There's the out with the old, in with the bold saying. I think that we as an industry need to be bold in identifying the gaps in our communities and moving unapologetically to fill them. We have tried to do that in multiple different scenarios, and it's been successful. It's been scary, but successful. And so, like the businesses we serve, you have to take risks in order to advance. And I think part of that risk is also re-envisioning what your structure looks like. So the second part to part three of what I'm saying here is it goes back to something I said all the way at the beginning of the call, which is we're looking at our structure, which was primarily dues and event revenue, non-dues revenue based. You're very limited in the amount of dollars that you're able to raise in that way. And, every time you onboard a new member, that's a new set of responsibilities. And by the time you get enough to hire someone at a livable wage, you're behind the eight ball again. So like most chambers now, we are moving in the direction of forming a Southwest Michigan Regional Chamber Foundation, a 501c3 arm that will be a subsidiary of ours and allow us to, again, fundraise for impact, increase our capacity, and improve the quality of services that we provide to our businesses. And that's going to be a paradigm shift for us, first time in 70 years, although being our 70th anniversary, I've been going back and looking at our old newsletters. And in 1968, our organization's leadership identified foundations as the future for chambers, all the way back in 1968, which it blew my mind. But for one reason or another, they never acted on it. Like I said, the society went the route of economic development organizations instead. So we're making good on that. This year will be, by the time this airs, we'll have announced our foundation, and it's going to be home to our leadership programming, some business development programming, and some community development work that we intend to do. And it's an exciting change, and I think it's going to be transformational, not only for our organization, but for the community. And it is a bold change. And again, we won't thrive, I think, unless we do that. Our area won't thrive unless we do that. And so while we've been operating the old way for 70 years, we're going to now operate the bold way. And I couldn't be more excited about it.
Yes, I love that. And I'm going to put a plug in here for anyone who hasn't read Horseshoes versus Chess by Dave Atkinson. Read it. He has a great section all about foundations and why that's the future of chambers going forward.
Right.
But that rolls right into the next question about how do you see the future of chambers and their purpose going forward? I think you just touched on it.
I think that chambers have a unique opportunity with the dynamics that all of our communities are facing. Guarantee just about anyone listening to this call is probably struggling with affordable housing or childcare, or they want more trails and better schools and all of these things that are more difficult to solve, more interconnected than ever. And there is no organization in any community, in my opinion, better situated to solve these problems than a chamber of commerce, because we're the connective tissue between the public, private, and nonprofit sector. And it's not necessarily the chamber that has to do it all. We have to bring the folks together, through our ability to convene to solve and tackle these major problems. And the other thing I'll say is, where we're situated, being the largest business advocacy organization in each of our communities, presumably, that connection to the private sector, I think that we don't put enough stock or credit into it. Because if you think about it, and this is a major, soapbox that I like to get on, The private sector either solves the problems in our community through innovation, or they generate the capital for the nonprofit sector or the government to solve those problems. Either way, it starts with the private sector. And us, with our relationships, our inherent closeness to those businesses makes us, again, the best organization in each of our communities to take a leadership role and tackle these big issues simply by getting the right people around the table. And again, that might be an intimidating thing for a lot of chambers, especially, those that are, again, short-staffed, or we have a lot of turnover in our industry and they might not feel like they've earned the street cred in their community as an individual. If you're part of a chamber of commerce, you have that air cover, you have that responsibility. You can make big things happen, and you need to, again, move unapologetically in the direction that solves the need for your members. And your members, those businesses who take risks all the time, will see you do that, will appreciate it, and will invest in you to help you be successful.
I love that. That really exemplifies the power that chambers of commerce hold, that everything starts with the private sector. So thank you for pounding on that a little bit and getting on your soapbox. It's well worth it.
My pleasure.
Well, before I let you go, I wanted to give you a chance to share any contact information for listeners who might want to reach out and connect and learn more about how you guys have gone about these mergers and acquisitions and affiliations. What would be the best way for a listener to reach out and connect?
Sure. So you can visit our website at www.smrchamber.com. And in fact, if you're listening to this podcast, I'd encourage you to visit our website, because you will see a toggle in the lower right-hand corner for our affiliate, the Bridgman CGA, which was a way to even link the websites together in a very usable fashion. And again, keeping their identity front and center. So visit our website, smrchamber.com. You'll find our contact information plastered all over there. You can feel free to email or call. Don't hesitate to reach out. We love to share what we know, or even brainstorm, because there's no right way to do any of this. It's kind of feeling your way through it, and we're happy to be that sounding board at the very least, or explain what we ran into and what issues could be avoided or successes could be achieved.
That's awesome. Well, I do appreciate that. We'll get that in our show notes for this episode too, so listeners can look it up there and connect with you. But really appreciate you spending time with us today here on Chamber Chat Podcast, sharing your experiences and perspective in what can be difficult conversations, difficult, transitions from one organization to another, but also keeping a focus on that identity and that sense of community all along the way. So thank you for being with us and sharing these things with us today.
Thank you, Brandon.
If you are a chamber professional, please subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. When you subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast, new episodes will show up in your podcast app each week as they are released. If you're finding value in this podcast, please leave us a rating and a review in iTunes. But most importantly, please share Chamber Chat Podcast with your colleagues that are in the industry.